Am I the a-hole for not wanting to change my name and asking Fiancée to change hers? Update. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to change my name and asking Fiancée to change hers? Am I the a-hole for not wanting my cousins that my fiancé could understand them when they were speaking about him in a different language? Am I the a-hole for not wanting to change my name and asking fiancé to change hers? I, 27 male, have been with my fiancé, 24 female, for 3.5 years. We are very happy together and I can't imagine my life without her. But we have had a hard time reconciling this disagreement, so I posted here at her suggestion. We have been talking more and more about marriage recently and what it would look like. For me, part of the significance of marriage is becoming family with each other, and that includes sharing our last name. When I think of being bonded with her in that way, I get really happy and excited, like we are a true pair and the whole world could recognize it. However, she wants to keep her last name as she says it is a hassle to have to change it. I think that's fine, but I'm the only guy on my side of the family who could carry my family name. I have two sisters who are married already, so it's literally just me left. It's a pretty unique name, not one like Johnson or Smith. So my family name would die out if I don't carry it and pass it on to our kids. Fiancé doesn't really care about matching our names and suggested I could change my name to hers so we match or otherwise just both keep our own last names after we marry. She has a brother, so her family name would be carried on either way. I feel like it's different for that reason and she should compromise with me and change her name. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to change my family name and asking her to change hers instead?
YTA. The presumption that women will take their husband's name is evidence of the relative disparity of value society places on men versus women. I don't mean to imply that you're a chauvinist or a misogynist, but you don't need to be either of those things to participate in this strange human territorialism. That said, your post says literally nothing about what your children's names would be, and wouldn't that be where the preservation of legacy comes into play anyway? You should probably ruminate on why you think your legacy is so tied to whether or not you stamp your name on a woman. After all, if your legacy is made or broken by propagation of your name, then it's not that interesting of a legacy anyway. Yes, YTA for asking this. Unless you're the last family in the world with your name, then no, your surname will not die out. The whole notion of a woman taking her husband's name dates to the Norman conquest of England and the concept of coverture, whereby a woman's identity is covered by her husband and his family. It's deeply rooted in patriarchy and early attempts to impose social order on people, since last names weren't necessarily common prior to that era. Naming traditions vary greatly around the world. The Nordic countries had a patronymic or matronymic naming system, where a child would use their father or mother's first name plus son or daughter as their last name, so Johann Johansson was Johann, son of Johann. Spanish-speaking cultures often give a child both the mother and father's last name. The Russians traditionally gave their children middle names based on their father's first name. Somali naming customs are based on a given name and the names of their father and paternal grandfather with no surname. NTA I don't care if I get crucified here, because obviously everyone here has lost their minds, because this guy wants to follow tradition. Her only excuse for not wanting to change names is because it's an inconvenience. After you get married is one of the easiest times to change your last name. If that's her only reason for not wanting to change names, then it's a bullshit reason. Any other reason would be better than not wanting to change it because it's inconvenient. If she didn't like his last name, if she wanted to carry on her last name for whatever reason, or maybe if his family were a bunch of assholes that she didn't want to be associated with. Those would all be good reasons for not changing her last name, but not because it's an inconvenience. Marriage is full of inconveniences and compromises. It's what happens when two people decide to take two separate lives and turn it into one. Sorry OP, because I was honestly expecting the consensus to be NAH, because honestly neither one of you sound like assholes, but seeing all these YTA responses has really surprised the hell out of me. Before I get a bunch of hate for being a misogynistic asshole, or whatever else you want to think of me. I've been married for over 10 years. My wife did not take my last name because she didn't like it at the time. I never argued or really cared that much because I don't care for my last name. YTA yes, I took on my husband's last name and no, I didn't think it was that hard to do. But damn, it's just a name. My maiden name was changed when the army messed up the paperwork from when my grandpa was in the army during WW2. My husband's family change dropped part of their last name when they came to America. How much research have you even done on your last name? Can you even truly say that it wasn't changed to what it is? Also, is she taking any kind of college classes? If she has a master or bachelor's degree in anything, that right there could make it a challenge to change her name. I'm working on finishing my classes now and then getting a doctorate in human behavior science. So well, I'll keep my husband's last name. I'll be dropping the Mrs. for doctor. Besides, you could always hyphenate your kid's last name and continue both names. Every woman has the right to choose to change her name or not. She seems to just not want to have to deal with it. Well, you seem to have some emotional and sentimental reasons for wanting her to do so. As far as family name, don't let people make you feel like that's wrong. Some people still hold a lot of value to passing on the family name, and there isn't anything wrong with that, just like there isn't anything wrong with not caring if it dies with you. People are allowed to have feelings about their family name either way. I took my husband's name, and I know it meant a lot to him. He said he felt proud and honored that I'd want to have his name. He carries his father's name who left when he was 2. He felt no attachment to the name until I took it, and our children were born and carried it. Now to him, it represents the family he never had.
Update. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to change my name and asking Fiancée to change hers? Hello, my original post got so much more attention than I expected, and I figured you all deserved an update. It was very rough for me to read literally thousands of messages calling me an a-hole. I even lost my cool a little bit. Shout out to the mods for not banning me for my tantrum, even though it would have been fair. But my wife and I read every comment together and discussed things thoroughly. I had not considered the patriarchal historical angle of asking a woman to take a man's name and give up her own. It's just that something I've been exposed to much. It turns out this was there in the background for my wife and was bothering her. But she wasn't fully aware of it, much less how to explain it to me. So it wasn't just about the paperwork hassle of changing her name, she was also resisting because she felt weird about giving up her name. I had no idea that she felt that way and was glad some commenters gave her the language to actually talk about it with me. Part of our process in resolving this difference was to do 23andMe tests and build family trees. This ended up being really enjoyable, and we both found out some great family stories and tidbits from relatives. I highly recommend for other couples to do this too. We both feel much more connected to our personal histories and therefore our last names now, and it was very moving for me to link our trees together and gave me that sense of romantic connectedness I was seeking through the names. The end result? We got married 2 weeks ago without a legal name change. In the future, we are thinking of hyphenating our names. Maybe. Neither of us are pressed to do it immediately as we are basking in the newness of our marriage. Our kids will also have hyphenated names too if we are blessed with some. I am thrilled to be married to the love of my life even if we are not a matching Mr. and Mrs. for now. I would still like to be someday, but if we do, then the hassle of changing our names will be something we suffer through together instead of an unequal burden. Most of all, this experience has massively changed the way my wife and I approach our differences or conflicts together. We work through things slowly, gently, and without assumptions until we understand each other, and that has been the best thing to come out of this experience. So although I didn't expect to say it, thank you to everyone who called me an a-hole for a few months ago. My wife thanks you too.
Every woman has the right to choose to change her name or not. She seems to just not want to have to deal with it. Well, you seem to have some emotional and sentimental reasons for wanting her to do so. As far as family name, don't let people make you feel like that's wrong. Some people still hold a lot of value to passing on the family name, and there isn't anything wrong with that, just like there isn't anything wrong with not caring if it dies with you. People are allowed to have feelings about their family name either way. I took my husband's name, and I know it meant a lot to him. He said he felt proud and honored that I'd want to have his name. He carries his father's name who left when he was 2. He felt no attachment to the name until I took it, and our children were born and carried it. Now to him, it represents the family he never had. YTA. The amount of emotional manipulations and guilt-tripping man would go for to put their name on their women. It's frankly disgusting. I'm the only man in the family. The name would die with me. No, it won't. She said you can give it to the kids. I want to be one unit. You get that by love and respect, not by blatant sexism and inequality. My God, the amount of emotional labor she has to do just to stay who she is. She is giving you the kid's name, but that's not enough. You want it all. I'm sure if she had a special name she would want to keep, it would be obvious to all that she can keep it to herself and hypernet the kids, and she would not be breaking at the seams about it. She wouldn't go around with that need to put her name on you too. It has nothing to do with love, it has nothing to do with one unit, it has nothing to do with preserving the name. It's just marking someone with your name, whether they like it or not. You said your GF is reading the comments, so if you are reading that one, run. If someone doesn't understand that everyone decides about their own name and together the kid's name, something is really wrong in his understanding of personal boundaries. I'm going with NaH. You both have understandable reasons for why you want your names. I changed my last name because my husband asked me to for your reasons, and it didn't matter all that much to me. Like you, he wanted to carry on the family name with our kids. Here's the kicker. We decided about a year into marriage that we don't want kids. Still don't regret it and didn't find it to be that much of a hassle to update everything, but if it's just for the sake of kids, you can still give your kids your last name or hyphenate. It's not a compromise for her to change her last name to yours. It's a sacrifice. Her brother having the name doesn't make a difference, because it's her name that's important, not her family's or her brother's. Pick what's more important to you, carrying on the family name, by keeping yours or becoming a recognized pair by changing yours. I think it's very presumptuous of you to have put so much weight on how important someone having your last name is for it to only come up 4 years in. I don't think you're an asshole, but your order of priorities does confuse me. I do think you'd be an asshole if you continue to try to ask her to change her name. For now, NaH. A lot of people I know in this situation don't change their surname legally but socially. So her driver's license will say maiden name, but then when she gets an invite in the mail from your family, it'll say your surname. This is what I do as my kids, and I have different surnames. Everyone socially at school etc. knows me as kid's name, but legally my license says maiden name. No one knows. No one at church knows, school knows, no one is any wiser, and surnames aren't really a big thing anyway. That gives me as a single parent the same name as my kids, without having to actually change it if I don't want to.
Am I the a-hole for not wanting my cousins that my fiancé could understand them when they were speaking about him in a different language? My fiancé comes from a very mixed background and speaks a lot of languages. His great-grandmother comes from the same country as my grandparents, so he speaks Urdu too. A lot of people assume he's just white, though, and just looking at him, you wouldn't guess he has Pakistani ancestry. 3 of my cousins met him for the very first time on Saturday. In front of him, they switched to Urdu and were asking me questions about him, including where did I find this hot white man. I told them to stop and they did and switched back to English. My mom called me to help her set the table for dinner, so I left them alone with my fiancé. While I was gone, they switched back to Urdu and were making inappropriate comments about my fiancé. He said he found it funny, and when they were wondering if they should ask me if the white man was good in bed, he told them I wouldn't know yet in Urdu and they freaked out. They ended up leaving before dinner because they were so mortified, and then today, they called me to yell at me for not telling them and claimed they were only joking around and never would have said any of those things if they knew he understood. I did apologize to my fiancé but still blame me for not warning them since they had no way of knowing he would understand them, and I knew they like to make dumb jokes. Am I the a-hole?
NTA, it pisses me off when people deliberately speak a language they think people around them don't understand. It isn't on you to TWLL them, it's on them to not make inappropriate comments with THR excuse of it's just a joke, and we didn't know he knew the language. Of course they won't have said any of that if they knew your fiancé could understand. They knew what they were doing was inappropriate. I love pretending as a white person, not to know other languages. I don't let people know, just internally laugh. NTA, I was a waitress. A friend who was a Roman Catholic priest stopped in for coffee before a long drive. This man is very handsome and doesn't always wear his collar because people act weird. A coworker asked if she could wait on him. So she did and flirted outrageously. After he left, she asked me about him, as in what does he do? I told her he was a priest. She was so angry at me. He knew I was honoring his wishes, to be incognito as it were, and I could tell he was amused while this was going on. I laughed my butt off. Not the same, yet equally amusing. NTA hilarious, they got what they deserved. Your fiancé was left alone with them and they decided to continue talking in Urdu assuming he didn't know. That in itself is rude. I'm Pakistani and my DH is English. I always translate everything for him at my parents' house, but they tend to not speak Urdu constantly in front of him or stop and explain when they do. You're excluding a person from the room when you talk in a language they don't understand. Especially when they're the only ones. It's so rude. NTA and kudos to your fiancé for a hilarious prank. Your cousins were in the wrong for making assumptions. On a side note, I know enough German and French to get by, as long as the conversation isn't about anything too technical, and eavesdropping on people who assume I'm just the average monolingual American is great fun. I hope someday I get the opportunity to do something like your fiancé did. NTA. It's rude to talk about someone right in front of that person. It's rude to talk to someone in another language to exclude the non-speaking person from the conversation. It's awkward for the person being excluded. It's not a requirement to inform people what languages your friend or significant other knows. Your cousins were being rude and they should reflect on their rudeness so that they stop being rude. I will never understand how someone else's poor behavior becomes your fault. Hey, here's an idea, how about just be a good person? When they want to talk about someone in another language, don't. It's a novel concept, I know. If your cousins spent as much time being good people as they did worrying about being good people, they might actually be good people. NTA. If they weren't being so gross, they wouldn't have had to worry about what he was able to understand. Maybe they should get their brains out of their shorts. Just joking is the most lame excuse ever. Got to wonder if they were going to try to seduce him. They make dumb jokes because they are dumb. They are the assholes, not you. And they are gross. They are the ones acting completely inappropriately. Not on you, he speaks Urdu, or to warn why our cousins. I'm guess when they get over how badly they were acting they treat you and fiancé with a lot more respect. Sorry, but I really have to laugh over this one. NTA. It's their fault for making assumptions. NTA. How about not being crass human beings? Then they wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. BTW, I have been in your fiancé's shoes and it was funny as hell for me to see the blood drain from their faces. Never saw them again after what they said though. Hope they learned their lesson. Never judge a book from its cover. NTA. They don't seem to understand just how rude it is to switch to a different language to talk about someone under the assumption that the other person can't understand them. They had it coming and luckily your fiancé found it funny rather than offensive. Hopefully they've learned a valuable lesson about assumptions here and won't do it again.